First of all, hello. My name is Joe Wood. I'm an instructional technology coordinator at Natomas Charter School, which is a K-12 public charter school that's part of the Natomas Unified School District in Sacramento. Previous to being an instructional technology coordinator, I was actually a science teacher for a number of years, but I was sort of a wacky science teacher in the sense that my students did quite a bit of writing in class. We had blogs, we had websites, we had social media that we were using in class. So as a result, that work actually led me to the National Writing Project, and specifically Area 3 Writing Project at UC Davis, which I'm not 100% sure if any of you have ever done any writing project stuff, but I would highly suggest it. It's an amazing opportunity and a great group to work with. So before we get started, I have one slight apology. As you're kind of seeing here, we had some issues with Blackboard Collaborate. So I'm actually sharing this through a Google Hangout. And Google Hangouts are sort of like kind of impromptu webinars that you can run on your own, and then you can broadcast them through YouTube. So Kim posted a link, and that particular link, if you click on it, you'll actually be taken to the live feed of this session. And the one thing that's going to be a little bit awkward about this is trying to get your questions. It's going to be a little tough, but I think Kim will return and check the Blackboard Collaborate feed periodically. So if you have questions, you can post them in there and on Collaborate, and then Kim will make sure to get them to me through Google Hangout. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. And what I'm going to do here is switch things up a little bit. So I'm going to share my screen so that you can see what I have in store. Let me move this off to the side. So tonight we're talking a little bit about what I call digital writing with digital kids. And really it's this notion of what does the Common Core say about digital literacy? What I find kind of humorous is that when I work with teachers related to the Common Core, they're completely caught up in whether they have to read nonfiction text or fiction text, or which canon of the literature are we actually doing. But I think the part that they completely miss, and the part that's the biggest challenge, is actually going to be what are these new digital literacy demands and how do we actually meet them. So I always like to start off with a story. And I don't have any kids of my own, but I do have two nephews who used to live in Germany, but I'm actually fortunate that they now live 5 minutes away right here in West Sacramento where I live. And so if you look at this picture, my younger brother, Chris, is on the right, and his youngest son, Caden, is on the left. And you notice they both have iPod Touches. Well, last year when they lived in Germany, I went to visit them and sort of selfishly decided to send them iPod Touches for Christmas so that we could FaceTime. And my brother is not the most tech-savvy person on the planet. He's gotten better. So I sent the iPods pre-set up. And this particular picture, my sister-in-law posted on Facebook a couple weeks after they got their iPod Touches. And the caption said something to the effect of, Caden's helping Daddy. And so I asked her a little bit about it. And what I thought was interesting is to find out that this then 3-year-old was the most technology savvy person in his family, and he was the one that was teaching the rest of them how to use what he considers his phone. So they were actually on a train here in England which had Wi-Fi, and my nephew was showing my brother how to navigate the Maps app. And so for me, when I'm fortunate that they now live really close, and so we spend almost every Sunday together. And I'm fortunate in having that opportunity, but what it's really sort of instilled to me is a realization that our schools have to change. And it's why I'm actually very, very excited about Common Core. It's asking kids to do things that are much more robust than we've ever asked them to do before. And it's also acknowledging the fact that they bring some skills into the classroom. And in the case of this, my nephew here, Caden, he's not going to do well in a classroom where it's drill and kill worksheets. He is constructing his own knowledge on a regular basis, just in terms of how he actually utilizes the technology. But a couple of weeks after they moved here, he was playing Angry Birds Space. And what I found very interesting is that he was able to sort of articulate to me a general sense of gravity, because when you launch the little bird in Angry Birds Space, you have to use the gravitational fields of the planet. So just thinking about how our classrooms are going to be ready for individuals like him. Now, this next slide is unfortunately not going to play so well because of our setup, but it's actually a video clip from 1994. And I always show this video clip because 1994 is actually the year our current seniors, or our now current freshmen in high school, were born. And the world in which they were born into, it doesn't seem like that long ago, but it was a dramatically different world. And this particular video clip is kind of humorous, and I would encourage you to maybe look for it on YouTube. And it's Bryant Gumbel, Katie Couric, and I can't remember their girl's name on the right now, but they're discussing the internet. And what's really quite funny is they very quickly articulate that they're not even sure really how the internet is connected to the world. And there's actually an email address that ends up on the screen, and they're deciding what that symbol is, that what we now call the @ symbol. They're like, it's an A with a tail, I don't really even understand. And so it's pretty amazing to think that, we live in a world where technology and the internet are a regular part of our lives, but yet back in 1994, people that were on TV every single morning weren't completely sure what that is. Now, what happens is you can compare that with, with this video that's starting to play, which this particular video is actually called Joe's Non-Netbook, and it's students at Science Leadership Academy in Philadelphia. And what they're doing in this video is they're showing how a book, when you double click on the pictures don't get any larger. When you click on the blue lines, it doesn't take you anywhere. And so it's really this notion that we have this whole new terminology when it comes to text in our culture as a result of the technology that we've had so pervasive in our society for the last 15 to 20 years. On top of that, we have students that obviously have new skill sets that they're bringing into the classroom, but also new skill sets that they're going to have to utilize in order to get ready for the world. And so I kind of compare that with this particular video, or this particular screenshot. This is actually a YouTube channel for a YouTube user named Hollister Girl 101. And Hollister Girl 101 is actually a middle school, I think she's now a high school student, who has been creating YouTube videos for the past 4 years on how to make friendship bracelets. And she has a little over 12,000 subscribers to her page, and her videos have been viewed around 1.7 million times. And so what I always wonder about students like this is, how is this skill set making it into our classroom? And when we look at the digital literacy demands of Common Core, recognizing that what she's doing here in many ways is what we need all of our students to be doing in order to be college and career ready. So with that in mind, we're going to kind of jump here into the Common Core standards. So I'm sure many of us have seen the Common Core standards before and have some experience with it. If you're not super familiar with them, a couple of overviews. One, they're quote-unquote national standards. Basically, there was a group that created them, and then states chose to adopt them. And when states made their adoptions, they could actually add up to 15% more information. In California, we did that, and we adopted them. We adopted them back in 2010. They're based on college and career readiness goals. So, what do our kids need to know to be ready for college or to be ready for a career? They're also sort of based around math and English language arts standards. And then what's also kind of interesting is that the English language arts standards also have history, social science components to them as well. And it's really this notion that literacy is everyone's responsibility. There's 4 main domains. There's reading, writing, speaking, and listening, and language. And out of the 4 domains, there's a total of 32 anchor standards. And but now in California, we actually adopted what's called the grade level standards, but we didn't adopt some of the other key components. But you need to know these key components in order to make sense of the standards. Like there's these things called anchor standards that we didn't adopt formally, and so you need to know those. But another part is this idea of, they call them the portraits of college and career readiness. So, what do students need to do in order to be college and career ready? And out of the 9 portraits, or actually 7 portraits, I apologize, there's one that is specifically related to technology, and it's the one that I have here in the red box. I'm going to actually cue that up on the next slide so you can see it a little bit better. So what this says is that students need to use technology and digital media strategically and capably. And when you look at this statement more closely, I'm going to read it to you, and so read along with me if you can see it. But it says, students employ technology thoughtfully to enhance their reading, writing, speaking, listening, and language use. They tailor their searches online to acquire useful information efficiently, and they integrate what they learn using technology with what they learn offline. They're familiar with the strengths and limitations of various technological tools and mediums, and can select and use those best suited to their communication goals. Now, if we look at this statement, there's actually sort of 3 main parts to it. The first part is this notion that they can search for things online efficiently. So it's this really having to teach kids how to do effective searches, but also that they can integrate what they're learning with technology, so these online searches, and other things, and with what they're learning offline. So, books aren't bad here. Books are still very, very important. And so is face-to-face instruction, but sort of combining those two. And, these two statements I think schools are aware of and they've been working with for some time. I know at Natomas Charter, all of our students in 6th grade just recently completed the Google Had a Power Searching course. So they all went through that course to really sort of learn, like, how do I use Google more efficiently? And our librarians also doing a lot of stuff with digital databases. Similarly, we're looking at ways of how we integrate technology with what we're doing face-to-face. But the one area I think is sort of a black hole for a lot of schools is the final statement. They, being the students, are familiar with the strengths and limitations of various technological tools and mediums and can select and use those best suited to their communication goals. So really, it's this idea of when do you choose to do a blog post versus an essay versus a video versus a podcast? And I think that statement's really quite fascinating because, one, vast majority of teachers aren't completely sure how you would strategically make different technology choices. But two, also thinking about the level of access that kids need to have, the experiences that they need to have throughout K-12 education, so that by the time they are done with high school and they're ready for college and career, they can make these strategic decisions. So actually, tonight, what we were going to take a look at here are the digital literacy demands of the Common Core, but specifically looking at some of the anchor standards. Now, Kim, can you tell me, can you see this very well on your screen? Before I exit it out. Let me put that back up.
Can you zoom in just a little bit?
Let me switch to the PDF here, and then I will be able to. So 1 second. And I'm actually going to switch to my highlighted PDF since the session is going to be a little less interactive than I normally do. Okay, so full screen. Okay, how does that look? Can you see a little bit better?
Can you? Okay. Yes. Yes. Okay. Perfect.
Okay. And can the participants see it?
And Rebecca and Amanda, can you guys read? You might need to scroll down just a tiny bit, Joe. The green.
Oh, it's okay. We're going to look at the document all together. We're going to look at each row kind of separately.
Okay. Okay. So Amanda said she can see it.
Okay. And let Amanda know that I can email her this document after this so she can have it to, sort of look at more.
Okay. And Amanda, you heard Joe.
Sorry.
It's okay. This is new to all of us.
Where does Amanda teach, or where does she work?
Amanda, where do you work or teach at? She's typing in.
Okay.
I think she's still, okay. She said that she's the librarian at Bandon High School and also the district librarian for Travis Unified.
Oh, cool. So over in Fairfield. Mm-hmm. Is she going to Fall CUE by chance?
So Amanda, are you going to make it over to Fall CUE at American Canyon High School tomorrow? And she's typing. Unfortunately not.
Oh, bummer. Okay. All right. Well, I will send this to her so she has it. So what this particular document is I went through the Common Core standards and just pulled out the anchor standards. Remember, there's 32 of them. I pulled out the ones that are specific to some sort of technology or digital writing. And what we're looking at here is in this first area is the domain. So this is reading of literature, this first row we're going to go through. And what the anchor standard says is that students need to be able to integrate and evaluate content presented in diverse formats, including visually and quantitatively, as well as in words. And so as we look across, you'll see kindergarten, 4th grade, 8th grade, and 12th grade. I'm going to zoom in here just a little bit more, make it a little bit easier for everyone to see. So in kindergarten, it says, with prompting and support, kids can describe the relationship between illustrations in the story in which they appear and what moment a story the illustration depicts. Things that we're used to doing in kindergarten. In 4th grade, we make a connection between the text of a story and maybe a drama or a visual oral presentation of it. And then in 8th grade, we start to analyze the extent of which a filmed or live production of a story or drama stays faithful or departs from the text. So this idea of film is really kind of where, in this standard, technology starts to come in. And so it's this notion of helping kids compare between print-based text and then some of the visual depictions that you might see. And in some classrooms, this already has been happening. Like we read Romeo and Juliet, and then we compare it to the movie version of it. And then in 12th grade, it's gone a little bit deeper, where they've actually had to do a little bit more analysis with multiple interpretations, looking at different mediums. So there's this notion of looking at the different types of publications that can be done for a story. So that's for reading of literature. Now, if I scroll down here, I'm going to go to reading of informational text. And reading of informational text actually is the same anchor standard as reading of literature. It's this integrate and evaluate content presented in diverse formats, including visually and quantitatively as well as in words. And for this one, it's very similar in kinder and in 4th. And then in 8th, what's kind of interesting is for nonfiction text, they have to evaluate the advantages and disadvantages of using different mediums to present a particular idea or topic. So this is being able to read these different mediums, but also being able to publish in them to a certain degree as well. And the publication really starts to occur down in writing. So in writing, there is a standard that just blatantly calls out technology. So the anchor standard is use technology, including the internet, to produce and publish writing and to interact and collaborate with others. If we look at kindergarten, it says, with guidance and support from adults, explore a variety of digital tools to produce and publish writing, including in collaboration with peers. Now, I just took snippets. I did kinder, 4th, 8th, and 12th on this document, so you can see the progression. This standard actually exists in identical form for kinder, 1st, and 2nd. And I know for the teachers at my school, this was a little mind-blowing, because they're used to thinking that kinder through 2nd grade kids can't produce with digital tools, that digital tools are really primarily used to give information to the kids. They're used to things like Accelerator Reader or Read 180 or Starfall or something like that. And so it's really this notion that as early as kindergarten, kids need to start experimenting with producing with digital tools. So maybe as a class you write a blog together, or maybe as a class you build a movie together, or you start creating podcasts together. Now, they're doing it with the support of adults. So this doesn't mean you just sort of like, hey kids, work on your iMovie on the Macs and walk away. You're probably doing this as a whole class in kindergarten with a gradual release to maybe small groups by the time that you're in 2nd grade and the kids have a little bit more independence. But it's this notion, once again, that they're able to sort of publish in different ways and experiment with tools. My school is a Google Apps for Education school, and looking at the standard, especially the part that says including in collaboration with peers, we're actually thinking of starting to launch Google Apps for Education as low as 2nd grade with our students. So looking at giving kids a modified Google account that they can start creating Google Docs, working on a website. And part of that is because of what happens in 4th grade. So if we look at the standard in 4th grade, once again, they're working with adults, there's guidance and support from adults, but they're using technology, including the internet, to both produce and publish writing and collaborate with others. So in Kinder 1-2, we're kind of collaborating face-to-face, but by 4th grade, we're collaborating through technology. And then this is the green line, that's why it's in green, sort of freaks my teachers out, because it says in 4th grade, kids have to have sufficient command of keyboarding to type a minimum of 1 page in a single setting. And when you look at some of the release questions for the Smarter Balance, which we'll look at in a second, you can see that, yeah, by 4th grade, they have to type paragraphs for the test. And so they're going to need to have some dexterity with the keyboard. This standard, by 6th grade, they have to be able to type 3 pages in a single setting. And I know at my school that was pretty mind-blowing because we never really did typing until 6th grade. And so not only do they need to have really good typing skills by 6th grade, it needs to start in 4th grade, which really means that they probably need to experiment with a keyboard in 2nd or 3rd grade. It shouldn't be that they see a keyboard for the first time cold in 4th grade. So then the standard grows in 8th grade, where they're continuing to publish and produce writing, presenting relationships between information. And then in 12th grade, they're still producing and publishing with technology, either individually or in shared writing projects in response to ongoing feedback, including arguments and information. So it's really this idea that as early as kindergarten and all the way through 12th grade, you're sequentially building your skills as a student for publishing with technology. So there's a couple more standards here on the back page, so we're just going to go briefly look at those.
Okay, and Joe,
Yeah.
we have Heidi. She just joined us, and she is the tech teacher at Truckee Elementary.
Oh, hi Heidi, how's it going? I assume she works with Rebecca, so Rebecca can fill her in probably a little bit too. Um, so Heidi, first of all, thank you for joining us. Basically, we're taking a look at the anchor standards from the Common Core ELA and literacy standards that are specifically call out technology or digital text. And we looked at 2 related to reading, and it's this notion that kids have to compare the text version of something to the multimedia version of it. And then the first one with writing is this notion that kids have to start producing writing as early as kindergarten, all the way through 12th grade using technology. So the next standard that we have here is another writing standard, but this is about research. So there's not significant technology use in kindergarten. It's just that they can do some basic research. But by 4th grade, they're doing online research. They're gathering information from both print and digital sources. So kids have to be accessing databases. They have to be utilizing Google in strategic ways and developing their skills. Because as we look at 8th grade, that just grows. Now they're doing multiple sources. It even explicitly says they use search terms effectively. They assess the credibility and accuracy of information, and they're working on avoiding plagiarism. So really, in 8th grade, we should no longer see students saying things like, oh, I found this on Google, and Google is their citation. They should have enough skills by this point that they're really citing sources appropriately, which once again goes back to they have to have these experiences throughout elementary school. Technology can't just appear in 6th grade. And then in 12th grade, it just grows. There's multiple sources. They're assessing strengths and limitations of each source, continuing to work on their search skills and avoid plagiarism. And then if we look, the last 2 are related to speaking and listening. And if I scroll down, so the first one is a comprehension-related one. So they're in kindergarten, they're confirming their understanding of information presented orally or through other media, so they have to have some exposure to media. 4th grade, we're paraphrasing this information, but it's diverse media format, so they should be seeing things in more than just from a book. And then they're analyzing the purpose of information presented in diverse media formats in 8th grade. And then they're integrating multiple sources by 12th grade. And then sort of the last standard is also a speaking and listening standard, but to me it really goes with this notion of digital multimodal writing, which is presentation of knowledge and ideas. So it starts off in kindergarten as you're adding drawings or visual displays to your work, which we do a lot in kindergarten. But by 4th grade, they're adding audio recordings to their visual displays. This actually, I believe, starts, I have the 4th grade column here, but this starts as early as 2nd or 3rd grade, where they start adding audio to their presentations. Then in 6th grade, they're actually integrating multimedia. So I'm thinking in 6th grade, by that point, they're pretty comfortable using PowerPoint or Prezi or Keynote or Google Presentation, something like that. Sorry, this was by 8th grade. And then this standard for 12th grade says make strategic use of digital media. This actually starts as early as their freshman year of high school. So they really have to be able to explain, why am I making a PowerPoint versus a movie versus potentially looking at a blog post or some sort of other static presentation, which means that kids have to have experiences using these different types of tools. And I'm an instructional technology coordinator, so I'm also sort of the director of technology for our school. So I wear the hat of deciding what tools kids are and are not going to be able to use. But I also wear the hat of sort of helping my teachers understand, what's appropriate and what's not appropriate for the instructional decisions that they're making. And so we have to look both at the tools that we want people to use, but also at what they're actually going to do with them and making sure that they have access to them. So I'm actually going to switch back to my keynote here and kind of move myself along. So actually, before I switch to the keynote, I realize I have the next thing here. Kim, can you ask them, how many of them have looked at the release questions for Common Core?
Okay. So have any of you looked at the release questions for Common Core? Okay, so Amanda said no, she hasn't. Heidi said she's looked at some. And then Rebecca just had a huge district meeting yesterday, so.
Ooh, Rebecca's our expert. Maybe she can talk about it. So we'll just take a quick look at this. But basically, if you want to look on your own, if you just Google Smarter Balanced, you're taken to their page. And if you look at the top where it says Smarter Balanced, there's a little drop-down menu. And the first one says Sample Items and Performance Tasks. So if you click there, it takes you to a page that has a lot of text. Smarter Balanced loves to put lots of writing on their page. But if we scroll down, and I probably have already scrolled too far, where did it go? There used to be a link in the middle, and of course now it's missing. Oh, I just can't see it because I clicked on it before. So it's right here where it says Explore Sample Items and Performance Tasks. So this sentence sort of down in the middle. And you click English Language Arts. And yay, we're there. So what they've actually done here is they've put up some examples. So I'm in the English Language Arts site at the moment. And this particular question, it's a passage that the kid has to read. And then it says, what does Naomi learn about Grandma Ruth? Use details from the text to support your answer. Type your answer in the space provided. If we go up to about this item at the top of the page, a little menu pops down, and we see that this is a 4th grade question. And if you actually click on the rubric or the text complexity analysis, what you find is they say 4th grade here, but they're actually claiming this could be used with 3rd graders. So we don't know exactly where it's going to be, but somewhere between 3rd and 5th. But it's this, really this idea that kids are definitely going to be typing into boxes. And so to adults, this doesn't seem like a big deal. But my sort of analogy that I draw is, imagine if I said to you, you have to take the STAR writing test with the hand you don't use for writing. So in my case, that would be my left hand. I could do it. I could come up with the ideas, but it's going to take me a lot longer to actually produce quality text because I don't have that dexterity with my left hand. It's the same sort of idea. Our kids have to have these experiences with technology, even if they're asked to just type in a box, because they have to be able to use the mouse to get to the box and use the keyboard to actually type out the words. And if we look through the questions here, the questions only get sort of more interesting in terms of what you have to do with technology. So this one, it's the same passage. There's a question that they have to answer, but then it says, click on 2 phrases from the paragraph that help you understand the meaning of this particular word. So you actually have to go over here and highlight comfortably on that particular document. And so as we move ahead, they just get sort of increasingly more challenging. And I'm actually going to go up to where it says view more sample items. And what we'll do is we'll kind of move down to 6th through 8th grade. And this first one actually doesn't show up very well, so let's just go to the next question if it'll let me. Of course, it's not going to. All right, we're going to go writing on cell phones. So here's one, read the text and complete the task that follows it. So it's basically, kind of a persuasive piece, cell phones, yes or no. And then it says down here at the bottom, based on what you've read in the text, do you think cell phones should be allowed at your schools? Use the list provided in the text and write a paragraph arguing your position is more reasonable than an opposing position. So filling in bubbles, writing with a pencil, completely gone. It's going to be more about highlighting things, writing in paragraphs. And like I said, for adults, this doesn't seem like such a big deal at first. But when you start thinking about, I do a lot of professional development with adults, and I'm always amazed how many adults struggle with the mouse, much less, a student. So I would encourage you to take a look at the sample items. They're very fascinating to me. And you can then look also at the performance tasks here as well. So with that, I'm going to switch back over to the keynote. So, I think the question that I get from a lot of teachers is like, okay, great. So there's all these new things that Joe's talking about. Where do I begin? And it can be sort of a puzzle. The first thing that I think comes up for a lot of people is, access to hardware. And so what I encourage schools and teachers to really do is really do a comprehensive inventory of your hardware. I'm amazed at my school. We've had computers for a number of years, and I'm actually new to the school. But we don't even have a really substantial inventory of exactly what we have and what it can do. So really sort of inventory the hardware that you have, take stock of it, make sense of what you can do with it. And what I say to people is all of the hardware. We're really thinking about a bring your own technology program at my school, largely because I don't teach affluent students. I have my school is more middle class, and we're about 30% free and reduced lunch. But what's really fascinating is how many of those kids have internet access at home. We did a survey last year, and about 95% of them do. And previously to coming to this particular school, I was in a much larger district, and we surveyed our students, and about half had free and reduced lunch. And in that student population that we surveyed, 99% of them had a computer at home with internet access. So thinking a little bit about what hardware are they bringing with them, and then also what hardware do they have at home. And that hardware at home is very important, because I think that one of the areas that we really have to go to as educators is thinking about online tools like Google Apps for Education, Edmodo, potentially using EduBlogs or Blogger. Because kids, so I'm finding that regardless of what student population I work with, so many of them do have access. And even if they don't have access at home, maybe they have access at grandma's house, or they can get access at the public library, or they can stay after school and finish something. And the important thing about online tools is that the work that the student starts at school can move with them. So if they start something in class in the computer lab, they then can do it someplace else. The other great thing about online tools is that they're platform agnostic. It doesn't matter whether you have Macs or you have Windows machines, or you have one of those at school and a completely different one at home. These online tools work with any platform. And then also it provides them home access. So kids can continue their work from home. Last year I worked on a pilot project where we had a classroom and they tested out these computers called Chromebooks for us, which are small, inexpensive computers produced by Google that only have the web. You can only do web-based stuff on them. So the kids basically just worked in Google Docs and Edmodo, which is a social media platform if you've never used that before. And about 3 months later, the kids then had iPads. Now, iPads don't do those online tools really well, but they do other things well, especially multimedia. And plus, they kind of look cooler than the Chromebooks. And we assumed that the kids would have preferred the iPads over the Chromebooks. And we found the complete opposite. And when we asked the kids, what is it? Why do you like the Chromebooks better? In every single instance, the kids said, I prefer it because my learning doesn't stop at school. It can go home with me because I'm using these online tools. Whereas the things that they were constructing on the iPads, while great devices and really cool things, they were stuck at school. You can't easily transport that work from one place to another. So some places as a teacher to begin to explore these digital tools, one of my favorites is this website. It's a wiki called 50 Ways to Tell a Story. And when you go to this particular website, the person who's created it, he's actually created pages where you can choose different tools based on what you want the kids to do. Do you want them to make a movie? Do you want them to make a timeline? Do you want them to make a blog? So you can choose different tools. And then he also even has where you can find different media, do they need pictures? Do they need video? Do they need audio? And then also storyboard resources that you can use with your students. And all of the tools are online tools. They don't require any software installation. It doesn't matter if you have a Mac or a PC. The kids can access it from home. And one thing I forgot to bring up about kids accessing technology from home, as teachers, and I was so guilty of this, I used to think, oh, my kids, they're almost all free and reduced lunch. They don't have access at home, so I'm not going to require them to occasionally do things online outside of school. And what I kind of realized after the fact is I was really setting my students up for failure. I taught middle school. So somewhere in the next 4 to 7 years, those students were going to have to find a way to get online. whether it was to going to the library, going to Burger King with a laptop, going to grandma and grandpa's house, something. Because when you leave high school, whether you're going to apply for a job or you're going to apply for college or anything else, it's all done online. So if I'm kind of not creating situations where my kids have to go out and find things periodically or figure out how they're going to navigate that world, I'm really kind of setting them up for failure, because after 12th grade, the world doesn't look like, oh, I don't have access, so I can't do that. The world demands that you find access, and so we have to help kids with that. So going back to the online tools, another tool that I really highly recommend schools explore is Google Apps for Education. If you're not familiar with Google Apps, it's basically an online version of a productivity suite like Microsoft Office. But there are other tools built into it as well, like you can build websites, you can build blogs. And the important thing about it is that it's free to schools and it's accessible from anywhere. So a kid can start something at school, finish it at home. This has become a critical tool at my school for, ensuring that students are having access to these digital learning experiences. And I know some schools are a little hesitant about this tool, and actually I take that back. It's never the school that's hesitant, it's always the IT department. But when I do this workshop face-to-face with teachers, one of the things I usually say to them is, when I went through the credential program, I remember learning that, one of my jobs as a teacher was to advocate for equity for my students and advocate for access for my students. And often we were, in my credential program, we're talking about like food or healthcare or, being able to see the nurse or the psychologist, something like that. But technology fits into that as well. And, I think we have to really develop relationships with our IT departments and help them understand from an education perspective why these tools are so critical. I know for me, I was a classroom teacher and then I went to work in the technology department. And so having those conversations with the people who were fixing computers or were used to keeping the network safe, when I just really sat down with them and said, look what this kid can do if we provide them this tool, they finally were like, oh, we get it, and it may be a little uncomfortable for them because they're used to this notion of we image all the computers and it has to have this software on it and nothing else. And what do you mean kids want online access? But, you really have to kind of show them what they're able to do and really advocate on behalf of the students. So with that, I'll kind of leave you with this last John Dewey quote, which to me kind of just sums up everything about Common Core and digital literacy, which is, really, if we teach today's students the way we taught yesterday's, we truly are going to rob them of tomorrow. And that is so prevalent for what we're doing right now. And, unfortunately, for the last 10 or 15 years in education, we've all had these experiences with mandated curricula and, principals or, no offense, Kim, but people from the county office walking through with clipboards and, checking to make sure you're on page 27 on, the 27th day of the school year. And we've unfortunately, I think, sort of robbed teachers of the ability to have freedom with their curriculum and what they're doing. But one of the things I love about Common Core is that that's bringing it back. When you look at the Common Core standards and you read any books about it, one I would recommend is called Pathways to Common Core by Lucy Calkins. One of the things that becomes abundantly clear is the Common Core do not tell us how to teach students. It tells us what sort of things they need to know and really what skills they need to have experience with. And so it's a great time, I think, to be a teacher, and certainly a great time to be interested in the use of technology, because the Common Core standards are really, with their demands for digital literacy, putting us in a place where we really can help students reach the next level. So with that, I'm going to exit out of the presentation and go back to the Google Hangout here. And Kim, are there any questions that the group is having?
Then we're using Google Apps, and I know Rebecca said that they're working on trying to get Google Apps in their district and are talking with other districts.
Mm-hmm.
And then Amanda said that they don't use Google Apps per se, but a lot of the teachers use the different apps themselves.
Gotcha.
Part of the apps
Mm-hmm.
EDU. And Heidi said that the tech teachers got it and use them on their own. So it sounds like people are using the apps within Google, but not within the formal, Google Apps for EDU education.
Yeah, so I know, one thing that's kind of confusing about Google products is there's the free Gmail account that anyone can sign up for, and then there's apps for education. One thing as teachers we have to be cautious about the free Gmail accounts is that students under 13 cannot get those accounts without parent permission. There's federal laws around it, and it's Google's own policies. So one of the great things about apps for education is that we can provide it to all students, not just students that are 13 and over. Also, you as an organization have some control over what the kids are and are not able to do with the tools. So I know, in my school, one of the concerns was, we want kids to have email, but we really don't want them to be able to email anyone. And so in Google Apps for Education, you can set it up, like at my school, until 12th grade, the students cannot email anyone outside of our school with their school district email. And then for 12th grade, we actually allow it so they can do college applications, their senior portfolios, those sorts of things. So I do encourage you to work with your IT departments and try to get that particular tool. Microsoft has a similar one called Office 365, which your IT department might talk about. It's not a bad tool. The only downside to Office 365 is it doesn't have some of the like Microsoft Office type things. So it doesn't really have a great website building platform or a great blogging platform, where Google kind of has all of those built in. The other handy thing about Google, I'll just be really honest with you, is Google Apps for Education has been around for about 6 or 7 years now, and the person who leads it is a guy named Jamie Cassap, and he's really passionate about this idea that the tools need to be put in the hands of the poorest kids in the country, because he was one of those kids once. And so that Google has actually done quite a bit of investment in teacher academies. So they have Google Certified Teacher programs and some other resources. So one of the handy things about Google Apps for Education is that when you do launch it, there's a lot of resources out there to support you through that. CapCUE actually runs the Google Certified Teacher program now. So through CapCUE, if you want Google Certified teachers, to come to your school and provide some professional development, or get some teacher leaders up and running, you have those resources there, which unfortunately are not available through Microsoft and the Office 365 product. Any other questions?
Do any of you have questions for Joe?
Says, Mom, I want to watch.
Joe, you rock. That's from Rebecca.
Oh, tell her thank you. Is she going to be at Fall CUE?
I think so.
Oh, good. All right, I'm driving down tomorrow, and I'll be there through Saturday.
Rebecca, are you staying over? Yeah, of course you're staying over. It's too far for you to drive back and forth.
Yeah. So let Rebecca know I'm actually doing this as a workshop. So those of you who aren't going to Fall CUE, you got a preview. This is actually a workshop on Saturday afternoon at Fall CUE. So if she wants to come see it again, I'll be there.
Cool. And Heidi said that she will be there this weekend as well.
Awesome, 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 cool. Well, yeah, if they see me, make sure they come up and introduce them, since they've seen me, but I have yet to see them. And I think I have their email addresses, so I'll make sure that they get the PDF of that we went over, so that they can take a look at it. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me, or I can be found on Twitter. I'm at UCDJoe. So.
Okay, cool.
All right. Well, thank you guys very much. Thank you, Kim, for kind of helping me with the technology snafus. This is what I get for having a modern Mac computer.
That's good to know. Okay.
All right. Talk to you later.
See you this weekend. Thanks, Joe.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.